Hello everyone, watch this review here where they look at Granamyr, the massive red dragon from the Masters of the Universe Classics line. Although supposedly, I guess in the comics or whatever, he was originally green, so I do think I prefer the color red a bit more to green. It's a little bit more evil, though again this wasn't actually an evil character. At any rate, the packaging is huge, supposedly, or not supposedly. I actually know this to be true. They opted for this sort of closed box instead of one with a window because the figure comes unassembled. You actually have to put it together like you would build a figure. Look at the packaging, it sort of goes across on both sides, or at least the front two sides of the image there. Then on the back we have a little bit of read up here. I can't remember him at all from the cartoon, but then again, there's so little I actually remember from, the original Masters of the Universe. So, I mean, my decision to pick him up wasn't really based on nostalgia, it was based on the fact that he's a giant, kick-ass looking dragon. Although, a very expensive one at that, this ran me $80, and then, in general, you have to pay a bit to get these things shipped. At any rate, hold on a second, and I'll get him out of pack. Here's how Granamyr looks right out of box. As you can see, the parts are divided by, two separate plastic trays. One was laid on top of the other. And then the torso piece is in a separate plastic baggie over there. That's kind of interesting in that the upper torso doesn't automatically come attached to the lower part. I guess that's sort of the point where it might have articulation or something. It's kind of hard to tell. But yeah, just gives you some idea of how big this guy's going to be. Now, here are the instructions, but I doubt we're going to need this. This is pretty self-explanatory. Hold on a second and we'll get him built. As you can see, Granamyr is pretty big. I bring in Drago Man for two reasons. The first being just to give you a sort of idea of scale. And then, he's also a dragon, so it's kind of fitting, but more importantly, they happen to share the same wings, which is pretty wild when you think about it, considering the very massive size difference. Not sure how well you'll be able to see this, but it's the same wing sculpt. So it's very, very crazy. Now, to also demonstrate the size, let's bring in a sort of standard heighted Masters figure. This is King Grayskull, the basic mold of which have been used for, I would think, countless Masters figures, so yeah, it just goes to show that even seated, Granamyr sort of towers over things. At his full height, he would stand 23 inches. You'll never be able to get him to stand up that tall, at least not on his own, and even propped up, I don't think he can do it. The joints are just incredibly, incredibly weak. But, I mean, in theory, yeah, it's kind of holding right now. Yeah, very, very big. Pretty little height comparison. Let's bring in the Marvel Universe Sentinel. Stands, I think, is around 16 inches, maybe 17. And as such, he comes up quite a bit short on Granamyr. Of course, just in the whole general design and stuff, Granamyr really is sort of better suited for seated positions. A lot of sitting. And I think I'll probably leave him in pose like that for most of the review. Now, first off, if you're wondering, is he worth $80? I don't think so. It's quite a bit of money for something like this, especially considering the Marvel Universe Sentinel there was only like a $60 figure, and it uses a lot more plastic. Well, it uses more solid plastic at any rate. Not sure if it uses a lot more plastic, mind you. And of course has better articulation. This, I think, a lot of the price probably just ties into the fact that, it's a really smaller run, it's a less popular character, fairly obscure probably as well, or at least compared to something a bit more mainstream like Sentinel. You know what, I guess it's kind of okay. I mean, my major gripe, once again, is just the fact that his articulation kind of sucks. Specifically just here at the arms where, he only has the sort of rotation, outward motion. Granted, we do have ball sockets in both the elbows and the wrists, so he gets the additional movement there, but it doesn't make up for the fact that he loses so much just on the top of his head, the top of his arm, which kind of annoys me. I have noise at the top of his head. But speaking of his head, he's got a bit of up-down. Can't tell if you can see this. Crazy thing's too huge. As well as rotation. Because it's sort of on a physical ball, he can kind of cock his head a little bit, turn it a bit to the side. Which I guess is kind of a cool thing for sort of occasionally amused dragon. Now his neck is also on one of those rod things, which I think also facilitates that movement. His head is a bit thicker. The helmet on top of it is really soft rubbery plastic, and it almost feels like it could come off. I think it's glued in, so I wouldn't recommend doing that. I don't think the upper torso can rotate. I assumed it could just from the fact it came in two pieces and it sort of looked like other joints, but when I try to move it, I'm getting a lot of resistance. I don't know, if it does move, I'll toss in the annotations or something. Yeah, tail does rotate though. It's got a ratchet joint. And then down here at the hips, we only have rotation just like the shoulders. At the knees, it's a single pin, but right above it we have a point of rotation, which I guess is a bit more stable than using a ball and socket. And then down at the ankle we have a ball and socket. In general, the figure feels kind of light for size. It's sort of rubbery plastic throughout, mostly hollow. You can see me push in the leg right there. Same for the torso. As soon as I picked it up, I realized it's really hollow. The upper parts here, the biceps, a bit thicker. Also here at the forearms, and then this. But the whole leg feels pretty cheap, and I guess to some extent the foot does. Paint-wise, it's kind of crazy because we have this really deep red for the head here, which is kind of weird. It's also got this kind of odd highlight in the front, but then for the front torso, you'll notice it's got this really light red plastic, almost pinkish in places, like the inner portions. And it's kind of funky just because no place else in the figure do we get anything quite this deep. Granted, it's a bit darker on the arms and stuff, and parts of the leg and as well as the back, but it just doesn't look as deep. And of course, my figure has a flaw in it. I always manage to get a figure with a flaw. It's got a paint defect right here on the leg. I don't know how it happened, but it's like a piece of silvery paint, so I mean, it looks like it was secured pretty well in box, so I'm not sure how or what could have struck against it, but it must have been something during the actual production process rather than the packaging. I guess it's probably not a huge deal because you can't see it from most angles. While the figure seems to lack, a considerable amount of joint strength, the arms are decent enough that they can sort of pick up smaller figures. Of course, they might not necessarily fit. In his arms, Mystique from the relaunched Marvel Legends line. Now, this is going to sound completely crazy, but he would make for an awesome Kraid custom, wouldn't you think, for Metroid? I mean, granted, the base body is like $80, so I don't think many people would do it, but I'm just tossing it out there. The body type does seem almost perfect, and then, even the sort of scrawny arms and legs. Oh, by the way, the wings do have articulation. Got these sort of the same in and out in the rotation that Drago Man, whose wings have weakened considerably. I'm not sure if it's just because he's suffered some damage or something, or the wings always kind of look this funky. I thought they're a bit better, but the joint strength is completely gone. Yeah. At any rate, I'm not sure how I feel about him right now. Again, he's a character is somewhat obscure, or at least something I'm not terribly familiar with. Definitely in terms of Masters canon, I think, he's probably not what comes to a lot of fans' minds right off the bat. Certainly not even close to mine. As far as dragons go, he has got a kind of cool design. He is a pretty big figure. One of the biggest figures in my collection so far. Sooner or later, something I'll buy will probably top him. He's definitely got a lot going for him. But at $80, kind of a steep deal. I doubt they'll ever bother reissuing him either, so if you didn't pick him up, you're going to pay more than that down the line, which is going to suck even more. I mean, something I'll have to own for a while, just to see how I feel about it in general. Otherwise, I guess in many ways he's pretty cool. So yeah, my opinion will gradually shape and form, and maybe by the 2013 Figure of the Year awards that I do, I'll have some idea of how much I like him or not, and if then he might appear on the list. Otherwise, he might not, and I might even mention him and why he doesn't appear. But it's completely off topic. This has been a look at Granamyr from the Masters Universe Classics line. Yeah, very big dragon, very big. Until next time, folks.